The Martians. Chapter 11. Mindy had worked with Donna and Anna on EVA training all along the flight, however neither could certify her. It was felt this wouldn't matter as formality had been generally cast aside for this mission, but Lewis pointed out that formality meant staying alive. Without certification, she was not free to walk about unattended on Mars or do any spacewalks if needed. Mindy didn't mind not doing spacewalks as she tended to vomit too much, but to travel this far in an oversized tin can and then spend the duration of her stay never setting foot on the planet was just too terrible of an existence to imagine. She needed to get outside, even if it were in an EVA suit. So although Dr. Abernathy had ordered a few days rest, Missy and Mindy worked on training and testing during that time, often with Mark assisting as most of the time he was able to. All slept a lot, and the second day after the transfer of command they finally answered the prefab questions on camera. It probably would have been put off again except Annie managed to get Mitch's help. "You see this?" Mindy asked Missy. "That from the dump?" "Yeah, it's a press release saying that Donna has us under arrest and stand down so that we can recover from our trips and NASA is restricting direct communication with Hermes for the time being as a result." "What?" Mark nearly screamed. "Sounds like Annie wants her presser." "Damn. I was really looking forward to not doing that again today," Missy replied. It wasn't that the crew didn't enjoy doing pressers, it was that they had exhaustion from travel, worries about Mark's mental well-being, and cabin fever. Donna and Ann had exited the Orion 3 to secure the ground bracing, but that had taken a half hour, and repair the short-range antenna, which just had to be snapped back into place and reconnected as it had been dislocated and disconnected from the acceleration when they launched. Mindy was sick of being on the Orion 3. Donna and Ann were too, but at least they had their Mars numbers now, 19 and 20. Mindy wanted to be 21 and wanted it as soon as possible. Commander Lewis emceed the presser with herself and the crew crunched in around the living area table. Mindy had set up the camera and put microphones on everyone, then sat between Missy and Mark with the camera remote in her hand. Once she turned it on, Lewis made brief introduction of everyone, bragging about all her crew had succeeded at so far, and especially bragging on Mark for all the work he did saving both their lives. She gushed thanks to Mindy, Anna and Donna for relieving them, as well as the Ars 3 crew for returning for them. Then they went through the deck of questions NASA had gathered for them to answer, most being softballs, but a few being simple to answer technical questions about equipment and the research they would be doing. Finally, the one all expected came up, asking Mark how it felt to be on Mars with an otherwise all-female crew. As it was directed at him, he got the first shot at answering it. "I'm not. I'm on Mars with 4 outstanding and professional scientists explorers who saved my life. Commanders Lewis and Park, Major Washburn and Dr. Abernathy, they are my heroes and I owe them a debt greater than I can ever repay. Each is a great person, researcher and astronaut and I owe them everything. If we were all male, or any mix of the sexes, my answer would be the same and no one would ask, so no one should ask now. It makes no difference to any of us. We are all great friends, but we are dedicated to our work here, and our schedule doesn't allow time for fraternization of the sort your question suggests." "I'm not sure they were suggesting anything, Mark, but I'm sure we all agree with you," Mindy started to add before Watney interrupted. "Besides, they are all really hot and can all do better than me anyway." He frowned, trying, and failing, to be funny. He just came across as weird. Lewis decided to edit out everything after Mark's first answer and before any more talk of romance was discussed, closed the presser out with a quick request for thoughts and prayers, and an admonition for students to work hard in school and pursue scientific, engineering and technical fields. One of the kids that saw the edited video was Kalani Akina, a girl in the 9th grade in Hawaii where her parents worked for the university. Kalani didn't want to see it, her mother made her watch it after school. Kalani's father was an astronomer at the Mount Key Observatory and had pushed her hard in science and math. Every after-school activity was geared around STEM subjects. Kalani was not surprisingly the only teen she knew with a ham radio license, that she neither used nor wanted. She had pretty much just decided to be a stripper instead of going to college. KK, as her friends called her, hated school, science and math, but that was about to change. A little. Her school science fair was coming up and her folks were pushing her hard to enter. Her grades were good, but her interest was low. None of her friends had to do that shit and she didn't want to either. She decided to post some pictures from the Mars 3 mission, since that was all her parents ever talked about, write some gibberish about exploring Mars, put it all on the display board her mother had bought from the local office supply and call it a day. The only reason she was going to that effort was to get her parents off her ass. As her father's work was related to space, the family computer had a link saved to all the satellite photos published from Mars, not just the ones the media ran, so KK figured to find some fresh material there. She hoped to even find some of the rover on its way to Mars 4 since the news tended to use the same one over and over again. She wanted to start with an overview shot of Mars 3, but not the one she had seen on the news repeatedly. It had been used by the media for months, but as the MAV was still there, it was clear that it had been taken before Lewis and Watney were stranded. KK didn't realize that the photos were published by NASA in chronological order as they were taken, so the first one she found useful was a large overview of the site, approximately a half-kilometer wide north to south and east to west, taken on Passover just a few days before. Lewis and Watney had been gone for months and were already at Mars 4 when it was taken. Huh. That's interesting, KK thought as she rotated the picture 90 degrees. Hey Dad. Can you take a look at this? What ya got? Something for the science fair, I think. Do you know anything about the Mars 3 landing site? Well, there are closer pictures of the habitat. Here, let me show you, his father said as he reached for the keyboard. No. This is the one I want. I wondered if you knew what these areas are. KK asked as she pointed to the screen. Oh, that, didn't you go over this in school? They took samples from those areas. 4 quadrants blocked off in squares around the habitat, then sampled in rows. Each sample can be placed in the exact right spot on the map that way. Looks like in some places they didn't put the dirt back in the holes. Got lazy, I guess, not that I blame them, doesn't make any difference really, and I think those are rocks. Let me zoom in. Oh, yeah. Well, I really don't blame them now. Even in reduced gravity, moving that many rocks would take a month, I bet. So, you want to do your project on Mars 3? You should talk about the geography of. No, I got it. Is Office Staples still open? It's only about 7, I guess. Why? I need a couple of those display boards, KK replied as she scanned the picture with her eyes over and over. I thought your mother got. I need a couple more. Could you get them for me, please? Oh, and some glossy photo paper. Not the real glossy kind, just kind of shiny, and some paste. You mean matte finish? Sure. When is it due? Tomorrow. She didn't even look up. And you are just starting. What have we said about planning, Kay? You know you can't just. I didn't have the idea until just now. Please. I think you'll like it, she replied, finally facing her father before returning to stare at the photo. Despite being irate, Professor Aquino was a loving father and made the trip to pick up the materials. It wasn't the first time he went to find materials at the last minute for a school project. He knew his daughter was smart with a generous IQ, but she had trouble finding anything that interested her. Her insistence on always wearing black was beginning to look less like a phase and had moved into the category of irritating, but her grades were solid, so hopefully her mother was right that this would pass with time. Dr. Aquino simply hated the music his daughter had been listening to for the last year or so and wished she would go out of her way to read something other than Poe and weird anime comics. KK worked all night, or most of it, and in the morning her mother and father were quite proud of their daughter's research, but her presentation looked, well, bad. Like a school project slapped together overnight at the last minute. Her father made her prove her thesis by showing him the results and methods she used online, and he was simply dumbfounded by what his daughter had found, especially when a search on the net revealed she was apparently the only person in the world to have noticed it. Even if it didn't check out, and Dr. Akira assumed it would not, it was still an interesting science project and was well documented. The display boards were carefully folded up and put in storage area at the back of the family's SUV, and once at school, Mom and Dad helped KK carry them to the gym where the school fair was to be set up. That her parents were actually in her school during normal hours was even more humiliating than PTA night, which they made her attend. At least at those meetings her few friends were not there. Her folks left but would return in the afternoon when awards were presented. The judging took place during the morning while the kids were in class and groups were called out of class to do their presentations to the judges. KK didn't get her lunch at 11, because she was called out at 10:30 for her 5-minute presentation and had a group of 5 local scientists bombarding her with questions for the next hour while she tried to answer them. She was dressed in her usual all-black attire, looking like a funeral director on casual day, and halfway through it began eating her sandwich because she was starving. The goth child drinking from a juice box made it all the more surreal to the people watching the scene. The scientist judges didn't seem to care about the other displays very much, or that hers looked to have been slapped together overnight at the very last minute. She did the best she could, but hated speaking and took offense easily as she showed her research over and over to their doubt and disbelief. One had a laptop and made her pull up the photos she worked with on the NASA website to prove she had not doctored them. "Are you sure you translated it correctly? Transcribed, and yes. I have an amateur radio license and had to learn it. Well, I didn't have to, it's not required anymore, but Dad made me anyway. I double and triple checked. It's accurate," KK replied. "Well, Miss Akina, you have my vote," a large Asian man, called Dr. Ng, with a gravelly voice said as he stooped down and offered her his handshake. As she reluctantly took it, he added, "My brother Bruce is the chief engineer at JPL. I need to call him and send him a photo of your project if that's okay." I wish I could see the look on the people's faces in Houston when he tells them that a 15-year-old, I'm 14. When he tells them that a very bright, creative and incredibly observant 14-year-old found something that they all missed. "Great work, Miss Akina, you have a bright future. Do you know what it means?" she asked Dr. Ng. Of all the judges, he was the nicest and didn't seem to doubt that her project was true. It was clearly a message, and a sad one, but there was no punctuation, so it was difficult to discern its purpose. It was pretty cool to KK anyway. "Akina, I have no idea. But it's important, you found it first, and first is forever in this business." This made KK swell with pride, even though she still wasn't sure what all the hubbub was about. The best part was that her bitch science teacher heard the whole conversation and was left speechless as her pet's projects about pineapple growth and the importance of eating enough bananas were ignored. The moment passed quick as she still hated school, but the moment would return soon enough. Science wasn't so bad now.